Hello, everybody. I'm Sarah Oblak Spiker, and today I have a pleasure of speaking to Donna Brown. Donna, all the way from New York to Paris. Hi, how are you?
Okay, I'm from Toronto. I'm great, but I'm from Toronto. So there you go.
And
I'm fine. And I am in Paris via Italy. I've been in Italy I lived in Italy for 38 years, 39 years, and I've just been in Paris for the last few months. So this is a new thing.
so, you know what? Let's dive right in on this new podcast that I am bringing to this world right now, Make Your Life Your Legacy. A lot of the conversations are pretty one-sided as for now, me, my spirit guides, and the audience on the other side of the whatever technology transmits the messages to them. And I oftentimes speak from a perspective of somebody who came from Europe to North America. So I'm super excited about the conversation of a North American going to Europe and making your life in Europe, living your life, and just right now you said being in Paris for a couple of months, a whole new chapter that you are writing for yourself.
Yeah, that's really exciting. When I was in grade 6, I remember exactly when I was sitting in my classroom. It was the spring. I was staring out through the windows at these, sort of cherry trees that were all in blossom. And I just had an absolute knowing that I would live in Europe when I grew up. And then I forgot about it. And then I remembered. Then I remembered, and then I moved. But it was really interesting. There was just this knowing that my place, sort of my most of my adult life, would not be lived in Canada. It was just very, very strange, and it was, yeah, it was an absolute knowing. I think it was, this first big image that I wouldn't be living there, and it's like, oh, okay, interesting. And then other life of it. It took some, some challenges to get me up off my butt and move, which is often the case, right? It takes you, sometimes it takes something really unpleasant or something that makes us suffer quite a bit to decide that we need to make a big change in our lives. But I'm glad I did. And as I said, Italy has been very, very good to me over the decades now. At this point, I'm also an Italian citizen. And, now I'm in Paris. Both my son and daughter are here. And with all the lockdowns that everybody's had, I think everybody can relate to not being able to see relatives, and we didn't thrive being in different countries and not being able to see each other. So when we were going towards another series of lockdowns, I decided to jump ship and get over here. And so, of course, from Italy, it's very, very close, but we're all more relaxed. We don't live in each other's back pockets, but we're all just glad we're in the same place. So
Uh,
it's a nice feeling.
oh, I can only imagine. I mean, my kids are too little to even comprehend not being around them. But I have everybody else is in Europe, and I know how challenging it can be not being able to see them, and or just being used to growing up in an environment when you literally called somebody up, hey, do you have 5 minutes? Let's go grab a coffee. Hey, I'm just in your neighborhood. Can I pop by? That I know for me was a huge adjustment just coming to New York when everything was scheduled 3 months in advance.
I know.
you know, I was just laughing about the paradox of living this way as a mom now with kids who are in school and being on a certain schedules. A friend of mine was checking in if I could pop in New York City out of blue one day. I was like, oh, when we were going through the schedule, and sure enough, it was 3 months later when we finally found the time. I was like, yeah, we got to shift something. This is not going to work for us. But I'm curious. I want to know all about, and I mean, conversation is going to lead us in so many different directions. We're going to talk about spirituality. We're going to talk about business strategies. We're talking about the luxury experience that you're creating for your clients, all the goodness. But before we get there, I want to know more about your experience of finding yourself in a new country, in a new environment, and how that compared 30 plus years ago in Italy under different circumstances, and now when you make this move to France. What are some parallels? What are some of the things that you can share with the audience who maybe have had a wake up moment over this past year when they realized that the life they thought they wanted to live is just not for them. Maybe they are remembering those
Yeah.
moments of inspiration and deep knowing from their own childhoods. Something that's like, we get to move right now.
Mm. So I think, I mean, I moved when I was very young. I moved when I was 23. And I just took everything in my stride. I can now say that I was an illegal immigrant. I mean, I just left and thought I would figure it out, which I did, but it was a little bit bumpy. And so I think that then I knew I was making a life for myself in a different place. I had a very, of course, this was 40 years ago. So you cross an ocean. I mean, this was pre-fax days. So think of that, folks. Um, and and so when you left, it was a leaving. No cell phones, no Zoom, no FaceTime, none of that stuff. So the distance was felt, but the distance was a choice. I had a challenging family, and it felt like a question of survival to just really put a lot of distance, because nobody told me that certain things would come in my suitcase. That you take certain things with you, right? But it was very, very beneficial for me, and I just really wanted to immerse myself in another culture. I'd always loved languages. I was a classical musician, and I just wanted to be in what I felt would be a more creative and a richer cultural experience. And at the time, and this is very funny because I'm sitting in Paris now, between Paris and Italy, I chose Italy. Um, and notice I said Paris and not France. But anyways, I chose to be in Italy for a number of reasons. And for me, at the beginning, there was this huge effort in trying to fit in and trying to speak so well that nobody could tell that I wasn't Italian. And then at one point, it was like, oh, whatever. I'm over that. But it took me probably 15 years or more. Like it took me a long time to get over that and say, you know what, I've done enough fitting in. I've done enough not seeing anybody who speaks English, not watching anything in English, not reading anything in English, to kind of morph into this. And you realize that you can only go so deep into certain layers because you didn't grow up, let's say, with the same TV shows or the same books or the same songs or the same school habits. There was none of that shared lived experience of childhood and youth. And so I realized that there were certain things that you actually can't be the same. And so then that was okay with me. I tried to fit it. And then here, it's very different. I moved here I came here because I don't even know if I've moved. I can't tell yet. Even though I've taken out a lease on a small place, it doesn't feel like a move per se, probably because I just came with one suitcase. That's all I came with. Um, so there's that feeling of temporariness to
Mhm.
that. But when I came, the lockdowns were 6 p.m., right? So everybody was at home at 6 p.m. So it was very strange. So I wasn't walking the streets and going to museums and sitting in cafes and maybe taking a French course as a refresher course. I was doing none of that because there was none of that to do. And of course, my son and daughter are trilingual, so they speak English and Italian with me. So there wasn't really any chance to speak that much French with them. And went, wow, this is crazy. I've been here for 4 months and I speak French with the grocery store people, like the cashiers, or if I go to a market or something. But other than that, I didn't really have a lot of a reason to do that. So it was kind of a weird transition also, right? I think when you first move to a place, your first thing is to kind of explore and figure out where you are. We've been coming here for a long time. I'm living in an area that my daughter lives in, and her stepsisters had a place there for, I don't know, 10, 15 years or something. So Paris is familiar without being home.
Yes.
So there's that too. I think when I moved to Italy, there was a lot more of the undiscovered, where this feels a lot more accessible. I sent my kids to the French school, so I don't know. I just felt like it's a closer move to me, I guess, from Italy to France than from Canada to Italy. Let's put it that way. And now that things are opening up again, it's like, okay, I've hooked up with some other people, and doing a little bit of brushing up on my French and getting out and seeing people. And I'm going, why? And I remembered I knew people here. It's like, why didn't I even think to call them? It was because we were on lockdown at 6 p.m. So nobody really did anything because you had to be at home by 6. So if you work Monday to Friday, it doesn't really give you a whole lot of time to do anything. So now things are, stretching out a bit, and there's no curfew anymore at all. They took that away. So museums are open again, and now I feel it's like, okay, now I can get underway, and so I'm ready for the next phase.
Oh, this is so beautiful, and it reminds me of a conversation I had with my friend recently who moved to California, 20 years dreaming of living there, finally mustered up the courage, clear all the resistance that was coming up, packed the car, and off she went. And she arrived right before the pandemic. And we were talking about the similar experience of coming to a new place, but not being able to really explore it,
Yeah.
and how she's just realizing now as everything is reopening that she needed in some way, and not to make it like self-righteous way, but in some way it was perfect timing because it gave her time to turn from a caterpillar into a butterfly, so to speak. This
Yeah.
year of isolation, of the lockdown, it was needed to go deeper within. So I wonder if that has been your experience too. Um,
Yeah, I was in Italy with the very first lockdown, right? So we were in the epicenter, we were the first country in the West, so it was a very big deal, right? Now it is going, oh, another lockdown. But at the time everybody was very much on edge about what was this really all about? What was it going to be like? And it it was a very interesting time, and I went through all the waves that everybody else went through. I just went through them sooner, right?
mhm.
Earlier, because we'd started our lockdown earlier. And so when I was already in this, oh wow, there's so much possibility in this space of being basically on retreat. And you guys will see you're not only, it's going to be okay, and you're actually going to be grateful for some of this. Everybody else, let's say in the US, was still in the fear mode, and I got, how social media can be. I got dragged a little bit through the coals for saying things like that. It's like, okay, they're not ready to hear that yet. They're just because, and then they all started saying, oh yes, now all of these openings and all these things. It's like, okay. So there seemed to be, these waves. And the biggest thing for me, I did a 30-day water fast and the first lockdown. And that for me was really, really pivotal in a lot of things. I did a lot of releasing, a lot of cleansing from some really traumatic experiences over the last few years. And also just opened me up to a whole new level of possibilities and of what's possible for me, or for me to offer to other people, but also what's possible for the world. So that I was really, really grateful for that. And I think, like everybody, I think they've started talking about the word lassitude, and people feeling sort of, because it does weigh on you. So I found that the last in Italy, one of the other reasons I left is because I just wasn't thriving. And I had been, yeah, it was just a little much for me. So that's why I did make the move here. And so the last one has been a lot easier because I've always been able to see my son and daughter. So it's been, I think, like everybody, it's been a bit of a roller coaster.
For sure. What really resonated in this conversation that you just mentioned, environment and thriving and changing
Oh,
environment.
yeah.
Can we talk about that?
So thriving, I think you can thrive in very unusual, you can thrive unexpectedly. I think that's what I learned. One of the things, right? This all of a sudden, it's like I'm on lockdown. It's like, oh, wow, you know what? There's something kind of amazing about this, that nobody was really asking that much from me, business wise. Nobody was really, because nobody knew what to expect. So it's kind of all the pressure was off, and everybody else was thinking about and talking about other things. It's like, nobody's going to even notice when I do this 30-day water fast. and, and and just taking, yeah, and so I did. I really, really thrived in the first one, strangely enough, right? It was a huge pivot for me. And what allows you to thrive, I think, changes, right? For me, that inward time allowed me to thrive, and then it didn't, right? Because it became very prolonged, and I suppose um I could have approached things differently. I also think that after a while I changed my approach to that form of isolation. I think that also in the long run, I probably co-created that feeling of not feeling that great about about being isolated. I think I could have approached that differently, but I think we've all really learned a lot through that, right? Nobody, I don't think anybody's done it, you know, perfectly, assuming that there is such a thing. And
Exactly. Like, what is perfection to begin with?
yeah, but it's like, oh, I crushed that. It's like, okay, you crushed it for you, but maybe not for me. So, I had ups and downs, and I guess that starts to make you think, what do you need to thrive? And I think people started to rethink very much about what it takes to thrive. And you and I have had other conversations, not on this podcast, but where I've told you I went through a very long and very vicious divorce. And so there was a losing of, there was a lot of loss involved and a lot of trauma involved in that. And so what is it that you need to live? What are you left with? What does that mean to you? What does it feel to not have certain things anymore? And after sort of a while, I also walked the Camino de Santiago. And again, you're carrying this little tiny knapsack with almost as little as possible because you have to carry it. And I realized that I needed even less than I thought. So that sense of loss turned into a sense of abundance. Like, oh my God, I'm going to go home and I have all that stuff that I thought wasn't a lot. You know what I mean? It just became a rethinking of what it is people really, really need, and or what I need, not people in general. I can speak for others. So what do I actually need? What makes me happy? I just had my birthday on Saturday, and the kids, my son and daughter, said, "What do you want?" I said, "Basically time, just spend time together." So we can do a few different things, but there wasn't an emphasis, that for me, I guess, was what you'd call my love language. But I just really wanted to spend time together. I didn't care about, presents or going to a certain place, or I had to eat a certain thing or do a certain thing. That was kind of like, what? Just happy to be together. So I think I think what allows you to thrive and what you think you need to thrive can often be two very different things.
Yeah. And can we talk about arriving to the place? I had an experience recently, for many years, and it's a whole different episode that I recorded and it's going to be published. But for many years, I remember thinking, even journaling, obsessing about and chanting about certain things that I wanted and desired, and it came to the point where it felt like squeezing a bar of soap. The more that I thought about it, the more it kept slipping out of my hands. And then at one point I was like, oh, wait a minute. I already have this thing. It's already here. And it just changed the whole energy around it.
Mm.
And I felt like settling in a whole new level. And then I looked around and was like, and you know what? I don't want it anymore.
Right? You know,
So we talk about the giving yourself a permission that even though certain things might take you, in the 3D world timing of like, I don't know, 5, 10 years, and you feel like, oh shoot, but now that I have it, I don't want it anymore. Can I change my mind? What's it gonna make me look like?
yeah. Oh, there's a really interesting experience. A friend of mine, a friend and mentor of mine, a few months ago bought herself a car she'd always wanted, and she considered as a marker of her success. And then they stole it from her front driveway. And so, and that really threw her for a loop. And it was, well, it might be, what if you were to think of things that people can't take from you? What experiences, what feelings, what things can you give yourself that no one can take from you? Anything can be stolen, can be taken, you can lose it in divorce, it can be stolen, it can be lost, it can be sold. I mean, any it could be broken. Any number of things can happen to these things that we say we want. And what does it mean to hold on to them, and how much are those things actually weighing us down from moving more swiftly
Yes.
along certain paths. I had so many lessons along that with I always loved books. I had a beautiful and very large collection of books that I love, and to this day I still miss, if I'm 100% honest. But when I was trying to find a place to live, at sort of towards the end of the separation process, I kept saying, going to see these places that I could barely afford, saying, oh, but my books wouldn't even fit here. And then I realized I was looking for a house for my books and not for me. I was like, okay, I think I need to, I think I need to rethink this, especially with the real estate prices in that. But, that and coming here with one suitcase, before we started recording this, I said, I don't feel I've moved because I came with one suitcase.
Yeah.
And there are a few things definitely that I would like to have with me that I didn't bring. But I've become much more sort of detached, I think, about things we have and things we don't have. And then that question, what do you really want? Those markers of success, the house, the car, the vacation, whatever it is, what is it that you actually really want that those things represent? I think that's when, and once you start honing in on what that is, a lot of those other things become unnecessary, right? Or you make different ones. You might need a car, but you might not need a new car. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So let's talk about that. Both you and I are strategists at heart. It comes so easy to us, and sometimes it even feels like both of us have experienced a, a way of future. And where we are right now, it's like we're literally coming from the future where we know how things could look like, how things get to look like, and then helping people that are interested in that kind of work kind of put steps in place that are aligned with their mission to
Mm.
get to where they and their soul is calling them. What is that feeling? What is the Northern Star, or what is some of the principles, guiding principles that you're using in your work to distill and separate the, okay, these are the markers that society is telling you that you need to have. Those are the expectations and the boxes you need to tick off because the society is dictating a certain way. Or like we were talking earlier, trying to squeeze yourself in a box where you no longer belong,
Yeah.
versus what actually is in alignment, what actually works and supports you, and what actually calls you and is your and yours alone, no matter what it gets to look like externally.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful process, isn't it? And the work that you do, and I love the way you show up, and I love the work that you're doing, and I love the work that you're doing with your partner. And I think a lot of it is helping people notice. One of my clients just noticed certain things, she does amazing work. It's very, very unusual and very profound work. And two other people who are amazing at what they do wanted to fit her into a retreat, but almost like a slot or a box. But that's not her box. That's not the size of her box. And it was doing her no service to do that. And they couldn't understand her because it's such a mismatch. Like, in the cartoons, when you see this tiny giant thing come out of a little teeny tiny box, that's the kind of the feeling. It's like, well, no wonder that didn't work out. The box, you just couldn't like shoehorn yourself into that box, but nor should you. So I think it's also that a little bit of discernment of understanding who you want to be, or helping people understand and feel for themselves. Is this leading me towards what I want to create and what I want to be?
Mm-hmm.
And and understanding when it's a no, right? Or people want part of me, but they don't want all of me. And even if you do, let's say, work that's circumscribed, let's say maybe in scope, it's beautiful if you can show up. The best choice is if they want all of you, maybe for a short period of time, or right, rather than just a part of you. I would rather, it's trying to find those and learning to recognize and creating, if necessary, the possibilities and the opportunities for you to always show up whole.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really, really important. And I don't know that um, I don't know that I talk about markers of success, and I mean all those things you said are part of what I do, but I don't know that I ever actually talk about them that way, which is interesting. Now I'm gonna have to go away and think about that after. It's like, oh man, I'm gonna be writing you a little note. It's like, okay, I thought of it. So I think that what I'm really looking at in each person and each brand or company or what organize whatever it is, what is the essence of what they are here to be? What is the essence? What is the best thing that they can create? What is it that would be the most expanded version and the highest version of that? And that the world is going to, that the world needs, because nature isn't wasteful. I don't find that energy is wasteful. There's no, when you can see thing possibilities or see what's possible um, for someone or an organization or a company or a brand, it's, there's always a reason for it. It's not that nobody wants it. I think the big flops, because there are some pretty spectacular ones, happen when people, when things, when you become disconnected from them.
Yeah.
And I think as long as you can stay in this, which is why I think people are so attracted now to the word authenticity until they're not going to want to hear it anymore, which is too bad. But there's a thirst for authenticity and a thirst for congruency, right? This, that everything I am and everything I want to become is represented by everything I say and everything I do and the way I live, and that there's nothing that mismatches.
Yeah.
And that's what people are craving, and they're kind of giving it the label of authenticity because they want this resonance of truth, not the absolute truth per se with capital letters, but a resonance of truth. You're speaking your truth. You're not hiding. You're not pretending. You're not forcing or exaggerating or hiding. You know, in Buddhist philosophy, as somebody who has low self-esteem, they consider it a form of pride. It takes a little bit to get your mind around it, but if you go away and think about it, you can see how that they consider that a bit self-indulgent
Mm-hmm.
to adopt that thing, to adopt those mind patterns, because they have a very different view of, you know, we don't have time to go in that now, but it's really understanding that I think my biggest work is to help people line up to that and to eliminate what is not helping them.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that's coming forward for me a lot, and I don't know how you, I'd love to hear how you're finding this, Sarah, as well, is that people are being asked to speak up, claim who you are, claim what you do, claim what you want to offer, claim what you want to create. Just don't mince words anymore. There's
Yes.
an awful lot of anesthetizing language and a lot of trying to fit in. We constantly try to fit in, or we use words that seem like words that other people say so that people will recognize us as part of something. But all it does really is dilute, if you want to look at it as a brand strategist, it dilutes the brand and nobody knows actually who you are and what you do and why you're here and why does it matter. But they also can't find you. It's like muffling a bell. It's, you know, it's like muffling a very pure sound. And it just seems that the thing that I talk about all the time, it just comes up literally in almost every conversation, is just say who you are, claim what you know how to do. Don't play small. Don't say, you know, if you can do, you know, Indian geomancy, which is called Vastu. Don't talk about cushion colors. Talk about the fact that you can, you know, change somebody's life and through fixing really big things. You know what I mean? This house is like, this house, this property was a mess. Not, oh, just, you know, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. We don't need bits and pieces of things. I think we need to play all of ourselves. And again, I think that's, again, that goes back to that sense of being whole, that wholeness. And it requires a certain amount of truthfulness, I think. And that's, again, a lot, it's that, and there I will talk about conditioning, because we are conditioned to be polite, to fit in, to not exactly say what you think. Wow. If you said what you thought in Italy, that was definitely 30 years ago, that was just not good. You know,
Yeah.
it caused me an awful lot of issues when I, as a North American, and I started to work in a very famous Italian fashion brand. It didn't work out very well because I just couldn't equate certain things. I just was culturally unequipped to deal with that. Um, but and I don't know. Do you find that we're all being asked to sort of vibrate at a level of who we are and not, and no more pretending, no more hiding? I don't know if that
Oh,
resonates
absolutely.
with you.
Yes, absolutely. And just on that topic, we can talk, another 3 days. So I'll try to be really concise.
Part one. This is part one of the interview.
Exactly. But what I also am noticing in addition to that is this process of getting into the place where you can express yourself authentically. And when you are congruent in all that you do and how you're showing up, there's going to be a ton of breakdowns that are going to happen. And
Yeah.
usually that can be a sign that you're on a way, just as much as this push over the ledge that we sometimes need to get us moving.
Yeah.
When things that used to work no longer work, and no matter how much harder you're trying to, how much work you're putting in it to make it go again, whether it's a strategy or a business model, speaking in business terms, in the world both you and I are playing in.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, Sometimes it's this commitment to staying in something because you have a team that relies on you, or you're doing it for your family, even though you're now all convoluted and just
Yeah.
out on
Twist it
of
into a
yourself.
pretzel. Twist it into a pretzel.
Exactly. Exactly. But then it comes a space where you really, what I'm experiencing with my clients and also myself, it's like the reason why, yes, we love VIP days. You go in, it's deep, it's intense, you're out with a whole blueprint. But certain things just take time. And
Yes. Oh yeah.
sometimes one of my mentors said to me, and mindful of the language right now, if you have little ones around, you might want to pause or
I
take
do not. Mine are growing up. Mine are growing
the
up.
audience. But what she said to me one day is like, Sarah, we're not fairy godmothers. We can't unfuck what somebody has been fucking up for 20 years. We can't do it in 2 minute time.
So true. It's so true. So it's true, and you also know that it's not true. You know that too, right? So
Exactly.
there's that paradox of this is hard, this is hard, this is hard. It's like, wow, that was easy. It's just like when you get to that tipping point, the change is, it's just like things just fall away.
Exactly. And
It's
it
so
happens in an
interesting.
instant.
And part of the difficult, so there are so many different layers to things, right? And it's not all one way or all another way, but it is true that it take, and I think the biggest shift if somebody has to unfuck things is that the person has to realize that it's possible for that to happen and that they can loosen their hold on that story. And anybody who's been through a big life change, a big change in, let's say, in your career, maybe you and or they were ousted, or something didn't go well in your something that you were working on that was important to you ended not in an ideal fashion, and or a relationship or something, but all of a sudden where you've put a lot of your identity and all of a sudden that's kind of torn away from you or twisted in some way, it can be very, very disorienting. So to let go of who you thought you were, to allow yourself to imagine who you can become or who you would like to become or what you would like to become is a bit takes a moment, you know.
Yeah. And at this point, I'd also like to bring in conversation, bring in the awareness over the fact that whatever experiences we all have had over years and decades, lifetimes, to be honest, that brought us here where we are, at every single moment, we have the choice and we have the ability to go back into the past and re-experience that moment, because there's always pieces that at that time we did not have the capacity to see, to
Yeah.
understand, to process, and we created certain narrative. But chances are that you're going to come to a point in life when you try to explain and relive that past experience, like that narrative doesn't fit anymore. What else was there that I did not see at the time that I can now go back and re-experience and re-explore, and like, oh, okay, now I can see how that actually served me.
Yeah.
And now I shift the whole story around it, and you can create a different future because of that.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And I also think that a lot of those, the pain that we're holding or the suffering of some kind that we're holding is still there because there's wisdom to be explored. And I think just like you have, I've explored a lot of different, modalities throughout and trainings throughout my life. I generally started for my own interests and then became proficient enough to do them with other people. But there are processes where you can uncover, and they're all very, very easy and gentle, but where you can uncover what is that wisdom that that pain is holding? What is that? What does that fear have to teach me? What is it that when I think of something, visibility or failure, or I don't know, there's so many things, but, just pick one, just pick one, anyone. Um, we're really good at finding stuff, right? And when you can go into that and allow it to shift, um it can be a very powerful thing. That's one other beautiful practice. And there's another one that's about, it's called feeding your demons, and it comes from another Tibetan practice. And again, it's what does this, what's it here to teach you, and what does it need, and giving love to these things that we try to avoid or suppress, and say, what do you need, what is it that you need? And you can get some very surprising and interesting answers. And it moves you more to a sort of to a sense of unity and wholeness.
Absolutely. A friend of mine, actually, a friend, I can say she's a soul sister of mine. She's a partner at the
Mhm.
Elite Mystique Agency. And we're just talking this morning about experiencing life through the lens of being in a museum. And you might be staring at a painting in a wall and it just doesn't resonate with you. Now, are you going to judge your whole life and say, oh, this doesn't work, this is too difficult, this is not me? Or are you going to simply now argue that the whole exhibition needs to be changed, which is not on you to change it? Or are you going to simply turn your body and walk into a different corridor, different part of the museum, and look at a different exhibition and simply give attention to something else?
Mm,
Um, and that's exactly how what we have the power to do with our lives. And you have experienced it firsthand too. It's like sometimes, yes, it is changing a story alone and changing perspective through which you see. Sometimes literally means removing yourself from environment and going to a different place. Sometimes it's changing biology of your body in order to recalibrate to what's calling you next. And there's no one way to, or no one right way. It literally is it depends where you are on your own journey, depending on
yeah.
what you require. So, I'm so excited for this conversation. I know our time is slowly coming to an end, but is there anything else that's coming through that needs to be shared that, um,
I, I think of a couple of things. And as soon as you asked me, one of them went out of my head. It's like, oh, I hope I get to ask this to Sarah. And then it was like, oh, no, what is it? But I think one of the important things to realize, and you were talking about legacy, and there's a funny thing about legacy to me, and that people imagine it as being some distant point in the future. But your legacy is now. Your
yeah,
legacy isn't
yeah.
some some distant thing. And people kind of can also get to that point of not relating to that, but understanding that the way you behave now, that is what creates the legacy. And I feel that we're also very free now in a there's a perception, let's put it that way. I think there's a shift in perception that we can jump what people call jumping timelines. Really all that is saying, why not now? Why do we have to wait? Why can't I do that now? I don't have to. We've been brought up we've been conditioned, right, through school. You have to do this grade, then that grade, then this level, then that level. And then then you can go to university, and then you can get an internship, generally unpaid these days. Then if you're lucky, you can get a crappy paid job. Then you can do this, then you can do that. And then if you're lucky, you'll finally get to do something. But the truth is, when you see so many youngsters, for example, like 5-year-olds earning $8 or $10 million a year on YouTube reviewing toys, which is actually a thing.
Yep.
Um, all of a sudden it's like, oh, so that isn't true. That I have to grow up and learn a certain sort of set of lessons, and then I'll get some sort of magical authorization to do something else. I can just do it. And so this is something that I'm really excited about, because it's like, well, why not do it now? Why not? Why not now? So the changes that we want to see, and this is what I'm really working on now. I'm very, uh, because I do have a certain ability to see things. I'm very tuned into trends and what's happening. And that's why I love kind of the future and future possibilities. I don't live in the future. I live in the now, but the future is just really a magnet for me as to what's possible to create now. And it's like, well, why can't we do that now? Why can't we just say, okay, we've done business a certain way up until now. Some of it's been okay. A lot of it has been not okay. And we can all see the results. So what do we want it to be? Okay, well, let's make it that way now. It's not like we have to do, somebody else was telling me, oh, a little bit at a time. It's like, why? Why?
Yeah.
Why do I have to do a little bit at a time? Where is that written? Anywhere that it has to be a little bit at a time. Just
Oh,
pick up and change. Just say, you know what? I don't live here anymore. I live over here. This is from today on, this is the way I'm going to change things. Yes, it's disruptive, but I think it's an exciting disruption. And I think that there are a lot of people working on what's possible. What can we do that's very, very different? The way people are investing, blended investing. So the first part is they know it's basically philanthropic investing, which is not an investment. It's they call it philanthropic investment, and so there's no return expected. Then they expect a second phase where there is something, or people blending these models, having these intrinsic models that where the DNA of the company is completely the idea of being regenerative towards humanity, towards ourselves, towards the planet, is part of the DNA of everything you do. Is very, why not? There's nothing stopping us,
okay.
and there's just nothing stopping us. And when they show all those things where uh, there's a picture that you usually see on YouTube of all these sheep going through a gate, but there's nothing on either side of the gate. It's like amazing. It's like, okay, or not realizing the doors to the cage, like we feel we can't do something, but the door, like we just didn't turn to see that the door was open beside us all the time,
Yeah.
and that we've always been free to do and be differently. But I feel that now there's a kind of a groundswell, and there are enough people that are interested in this, that things are going to accelerate, change is going to accelerate very, very quickly. So that's something that I'm really, really excited about. And I feel that everybody should just, put on their thinking, dreaming caps and figure out, what do you really want?
Exactly. Yeah, I think with the whole, you have heard me speak before about this new aquarium age after the 2000 years of Bayesian living, very archaic, very hierarchical. Now, really, the whole, even the youngsters that you're referring to, these are people, human beings who are wired very differently than you and I have been. They have a heightened awareness. I mean, the conversations I'm having with my 8 and 6 year old, I was like, where did you come from? And it's so incredibly humbling to know that those are the emerging leaders that are going to be taking over. And people like you and I, and our clients, and people in our communities and circles, we are here to kind of help prepare the terrain. And we are still in this ebb and flow of what it used to be and what it used to work versus what we know to be true because we have seen it in our vision. And leveraging this trust that we have built and capacity that we have built over the years to hold both, because certain things, yeah, they can change in an instant, and certain things they just need time to unravel, to resolve, to alchemize. And it's very intense, and it's very dynamic, and it's very confusing and frustrating sometimes. We're going to be
I'm
honest.
also super excited. Like I'm really, really excited. I'm really excited. I always tell people, like when I do certain work with clients, it's like standing on a hill and looking out over the landscape, imagine of everything that they can create. And
Yeah.
you do that with enough people, you start piecing together a patchwork of a new world, of a new reality, of a new way of doing things. That is amazing.
Yeah.
And there's so much that's beautiful that's waiting for us just to create it. It's not that hard. A lot of things are well within our grasp today.
Absolutely. I would even add that they are already here. It's just on us, like in a gallery, what picture you're looking at. It's like, okay, I have a
Yeah.
flashlight, I have a torch. What tree I'm gonna highlight, where I'm gonna focus on. So, oh my goodness, Donna, I wish we had like 3 more days to talk.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It's always a joy to speak to you. And thank you so much. I hope the audience found value or interest and benefit in that. And thank you so much for having me.
My absolute pleasure. And for those of those individuals in the audience who might want to get in touch with you, who want to learn more about your work, what is the best way for them to do so?
So you can find me. I have a really exciting name, Donna Brown. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can write me at donna@donnabrowndesign.com. I have a website that's been a holding page for a while because I haven't written my copy. That's my fault. But you can find me there too. Yes, there's a way to sign up there too, to find me there. On all the social media platforms. Basically, for some reason, even on Instagram, I am at Donna Brown. I think I must have been a super early adopter to get that name. It's a super common name. So there you go. You can find me pretty much anywhere. And of course, I'm also on Clubhouse. Love Clubhouse.
Oh yeah, Clubhouse. That's a whole different
Whole
universe to explore.
conversation. Yeah, yeah.
So thank you so much. This was such a pleasure, and talk to you soon.
Thank you. Thank you. It's lovely. Thank you so much, Sue.